people in the church. Maybe that's what I'd say, people in the church. Because you see, the church is just, where 2 or 3 people come together and Jesus is there, then it becomes a church. But then what people normally, the heart comes from people in the church, or people especially in leadership positions in the church. So I'm cognizant of the fact that there are people actually who really are struggling in that pain, in that, if I use Christianese, that season, where either they are withdrawing from the church, or they're struggling to reconnect with the community, or they're still being haunted by whatever experience that happened with church folk. And it's a big issue, especially these urban churches, modern churches. I guess in the upcountry churches, things are a bit different. But in most urban churches, mega churches, there's a lot of heart lying around, which I guess needs to be addressed. But it's multi-layered, if you'd ask me. So my experience is very different with church heart, and that's why I also have stayed in 2 churches where I was sort of born again and started. Then when I was of age, I chose my church. And that church is where I've served all my life, pretty much. The same church sent me to go plant another one, Nairobi Chapel Rongai, but with Pastor Albo. Then I came back.
Hello and welcome back to the 360 Perspective podcast with me, Trisha. It is yet another Thursday, another episode as we continue on this series on faith matters, and a whole lot of thank you to all the new subscribers. Karibuni sana to this channel and this journey of just getting our perspective right on different issues of life. And today we are going to talk about a popular topic that is within the church spaces and church circles, and that is church hurt and cancel culture. And to discuss this topic with me is a good old friend. Let him introduce himself. Karibu sana, DJ Celeb. I'm sure it's a face that you've seen before, but Karibu sana. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Asante sana. Thank you. My name is John. Those are my official names, John Joroge, but on stage, DJ John Celeb. Been a DJ for quite some time. I think I started when I was in Form 2. Been a Christian for longer than that. Got saved when I was 9 years old. Served in 2 churches, ideally, where my cousin took me to church, and then Nairobi Chapel, which is my current church. So when I became a teenager, I was like, okay, now this is the kind of church I want to sort of plug in and serve at. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to have conversations, and I look forward to the conversations today.
Karibu sana. DJ Celeb.
Yes.
Now that you said you got born again at 9,
yes,
I am pretty sure that you have gone through experience of church hurt. Or I don't know, maybe you haven't, but a lot of us out here in these streets, we have. So I don't know whether you've been through just church hurt, and if you don't mind just sharing like your experience and journey in that.
I think my case has been different, and I think I'm in a group of people who are talking about church hurt, and I said, for some reason, I've never dealt with church hurt personally. I mean, of course, with other people and friends. I think interestingly is because when I got saved, my sort of cousin is the one who led me to the faith. I say sort of is my brother. I lived in the same house with him, so he's my brother, but ideally my cousin. He was a Sunday school teacher, so he led me to the faith. And what happened in that period of time, it was preteen. So he made church compulsory in the sense that you'd rather skip school than skip church. Because then he was a church caretaker. He had keys to the main gate. Church had a field where you'd go and play football. So what happened is my association with the church or my perspective changed a lot because of that. Because then church became, I have to go to church, but then we had a football team. We started a dance crew. We started a drama club. So essentially church became the cool place to be. So if I need to hang around, I just go hang around in the church compound. Of course, I had the key, but then we'd go in with my friends, play football. I tried. At some point, I was even a rapper. I tried rapping.
Wow.
Once we won an award for like Nairobi East or Nairobi West District.
Okay, that's serious.
In our church space. But we were trying everything and anything. At some point, we even tried fasting. We went to Karura in the caves. I remember it was 1997 or 98. I remember it was for us, it was adventure. I mean, for the church, it was those serious things. But for us, we were like, a chance to go away from home for camp. We just didn't know is fasting for 3 days when you're a teenager is the worst thing you can do. But then that shaped sort of my relationship with the church. So for me, church became my escape as a teenager, or the place where they engaged me to explore all my that's why I actually started DJing with my Discmans in that space. So for me, church became or has always been my place where I connect, I try things out, and then they allowed me to be myself. So that sort of got me into a different perspective when it comes to church. I've never been a church staff member, but I've served in different departments. I've done a lot of things with the church, missions, trips, name it. So for me, that relationship with the church is very different. But I'm very aware that most of my friends or some of my friends have really had a really hard experience with people in the church. Maybe that's what I'd say, people in the church. Because you see, the church is just, where 2 or 3 people come together and Jesus is there, then it becomes a church. But then what people normally, the heart comes from people in the church, or people especially in leadership positions in the church. So I'm cognizant of the fact that there are people actually who really are struggling in that pain, in that, if I use Christianese, that season, where either they are withdrawing from the church, or they're struggling to reconnect with the community, or they're still being haunted by whatever experience that happened with church folk, and it's a big issue, especially these urban churches, modern churches. I guess in the upcountry churches, things are a bit different. But in most urban churches, mega churches, there's a lot of heart lying around. Which I guess needs to be addressed, but it's multi-layered, if you'd ask me. So my experience is very different with church heart, and that's why I also have stayed in 2 churches where I was sort of born again and started. Then when I was of age, I chose my church, and that church is where I've served all my life, pretty much. The same church sent me to go plant another one, Nairobi Chapel Rongai, but with Pastor Albo. Then I came back. So pretty much that has been my life. I've stayed in the same place for years.
Wow. And that's beautiful. And I feel like your story is quite unique, because I know for, I'm sure there are a lot of people who can say, I have moved churches, I've literally hopped from one church to another, to another, to another. And I think it brings me to that question of expectations, like church expectations, because I feel like a lot of people get disappointed because of certain expectations that they have, and I think it's something that we probably can address right now, because I feel like where there's expectation, there's room for disappointment.
And and let me say with young people especially, because after college, I remember, let me just use my example. I was torn in between, because I'd done a lot of media events and church work, but then my degree is in energy engineering. So I'd applied for this job, so this interview to go do energy, and then there was an interview to go work at a church. But then I wanted both. Energy was, for me, was make money, then come transform lives. That was the whole point with engineering. But then I also needed the skill, because I figured if I can think like an engineer in an art space, then I'll be at an advantage. But then when I was making that decision, at least there were sound people around me. In fact, let me just mention Pastor Albo. He did mechanical engineering, so he understood my front, but then he became a pastor. So that for me I was very interested to hear what's the plan here. I said, I did this, but then I became this. I'm full-time church. He's a church planter now. He's planted churches all over the place. But then I remember a conversation I had with him. He asked me, are you looking for a career, or do you want to serve God, or are you looking for a means to earn a living? What are you really looking at? And I think for me, that question made me think a lot. And in case in point, young people come into the church space, and I mean, there's an employment, there are not many jobs, and the modern mega church in Nairobi or in Kenya, some of them do offer a pretty good career line. I mean, I'm serving God, yet I'm being paid at least almost market rate or not market rate, or something that can sustain me. And then with mega church, add all the mission trips where you get to travel the world, which young people love. It becomes a good package. You're like, oh, if I'm a member of staff, I'll go on missions, I'll travel. Other than that, I still earn a living. I'm still serving God. So it forms the complete picture, if you ask me, for most people, especially if that's what you are trying to do. But then he asked me, what's stronger, your conviction to serve God, or building a career that's better than hustling in the corporate world? And I went back and I said, that's a very interesting question. What do I really, really want? Because if I'm able to answer that, whichever way I go, I'll go with a clear mind. So for my case, I went for both. I was like, I'm going to do the application and go for the interview for this energy firm. But I'm also going to try. I didn't go for a church staff work, but I decided, let me do these media things. I remember that's when I was getting a contract with K24. And I said, you know what, I'll go for both. Whichever is not from God, he'll close it. But then I was clear, I'd want to serve. But then I was like, but I don't want to go to church because it's a career. I don't want to go with an expectation that this is my way out, or this is how I build wealth or career, or and there's no problem with building a career from a church sort of job. But my expectation needed to be very clear, especially for me, to figure out, if I take the church job, am I taking it because the job has a good salary and perks, or am I taking it because I want to serve? And what happens if the energy job gives me more money than the church gives me? I mean, in terms of, if comparatively, if I can make more, and ideally I could make more with energy. But then I said, you know what? Media is where my sweet spot is. And when I'm in media, I have a bit of free time to actually do stuff that I want. So when the results came, I had to make a choice. The energy one was work until Sunday. This media one, it still allowed me to still do church stuff, but still thrive in whatever I'm doing. The church job, I didn't take it. Interestingly, why I didn't take it is that I was like, whatever I'm bringing to the church, I want it to be a service to God, which will give me clarity whether I'm going in for the money and the package, or I'm going for actually serving God. So I said, media allows me to still do the same things with the church, but from the outside, and test my heart to see whether this is really, I'm doing it for career building, or because this is the best bet, doesn't have a lot of drama, or am I really serving God first before I serve my own career needs and expectations? So that for me was a game changer. And why I like to use that example is that I see most young people, in fact, the ones we've had conversations with them, they left their careers and chose to work for the church. And I know sometimes it's not as easy maybe as it is for me to make that call and say, I'll go do environmental science, or I'll serve in the church. At my heart, I'm passionate about children, I'm passionate about youth, I'm passionate about music. Let me go into the church and serve, hoping that they'll see my talent and pay me better or open up more opportunities. And most people have been caught up in that, where I want to serve God, but also, I need to build a career. But if I can serve God and build a career, then it becomes the easier route. But the problem with that is this. In the corporate space, it's profit. And for profit, it's very easy. Margins, you can see revenue and money coming in. So it's easier to get all the benefits that come with a career in the corporate space. But in the church space, something interesting happens. The church, especially in our Kenyan setup, people give to the church. And when people give to the church, it means the more people you have who are convicted to give their tithes and offering faithfully, the church will have enough resources to run its programs, but also to pay staff members. The moment like COVID, where there was a shift in people's incomes, the first thing people do is not give to the church. So chances are, if you pick a career in the church, the salary sort of curve won't be as straightforward as a career in the corporate space. And that's a reality most people don't put into, or a filter that people don't think about when they are choosing a career in the church. Because if you have that understanding saying, hey, I'm going into this space because God provides, because God has called me, or I'm going there in faith, where else knowing clearly that if the giving goes down, some of us might have to take a pay cut, or finances might change. Redundancy is a possibility in the church, because people give, and then immediately people's income, whatever brackets or income issues change. The first place that suffers is where they give their money to. In some churches that are a bit cultic, it's the opposite. More people give more because, you want God to bless you more. But in the churches that have HR and they employ people to serve, that's a reality. And as young people, that's a reality that I felt. Case in point, one of my friends never thought about it because they had a scholarship.
Yeah.
They let it go, but then they went to work in the church. But then finances turned around, they were let go, and they were very hard with the church. Then I remember asking them, so when you're coming in, were you expecting, grow this year, you're at this amount of salary, then you get a, promotion? Like, yeah, that's what I was expecting. I was expecting to get some, I've seen what they're paying, so and so. And I was like, yeah, there's that. They're in a different track. They're serving differently. They've had history. They're like, yeah, but how come I'm also not getting the same? Yet I did forego my scholarship in the Netherlands, and I came to serve in this church. And after 4 years, now they have their, like lean staff type of conversations. They're stripping down a bit of some of the roles and duties, and unfortunately they're letting me go. I was like, I hear you, and probably the church has its own reasons why, the church administration in this case has its own reasons. But when you're coming in, is this a reality that you have in mind, that these finances or the revenue that the church has might not be that predictable or that linear for most of the time? And COVID has shown us all that. Some churches closed, some don't have enough money even to pay electricity bills. Some, pastors sort of gave up and moved back to corporate or went into business or entrepreneurship. So that's a reality. I keep on saying, as you make a career choice, think about it in terms of where the money comes from, and then make peace with it at the beginning. Say, I'm going in here, but it's a journey of faith. Money might come, money might not come. Corporate is very predictable. At least they try to be focused and predict. So that for me was a big game changer. And I've always had that attitude. The church, people give to the church. So I look at it, if I'm serving the church, then I'm also one of the givers to the church, either through my gift, my time. So that for me is very clear. So whenever I go to any church space, the first thing that comes to mind is people give to the church. So even if it's my services, let me come with the attitude that I'm giving to the church, and God, who is the rewarder of men, will reward me. But it's a very hard conversation to have.
Yeah, and I love that last bit where you said coming to the church with the mindset of I'm coming to serve, and not, like the bigger picture is you're doing is unto God and not unto man. Because I think the other question that I know you've talked about, that's from the sense of employment. And personally for me, I do work for a church space. But I'm so glad a friend of mine, before I took up the job, she had to get my perspective right, in terms of Trisha. As you go into the church space, I think the perspective of it's a hospital for people who are wounded, who are trying to get their lives right. And I think that's part of what we sometimes don't enter, whether it's church community, whether it's church organization, as work, or even just plugging in as community. I think we go in with the mindset that these people are perfect. They're the leaders, they're the, pastors and whatnot. But in reality, as long as this person is a human being, they are broken, and they need God, and that's the bottom line. So I think for me, I had to get that perspective right, so that as I entered into that space as an employee, I had to ensure that, my heart is guarded. when those moments would come, and they did come, of feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this pastor, this individual that I've always looked up to can do 1, 2, 3 things. But I think when those moments came, I had the maturity to understand that this is just a broken human being who needs God. And I think you touched on just that place of service unto God. And I realized part of the community or groups of people who get hurt in the church are the guys who are, obviously talented and highly gifted,
Yep.
and they end up overgiving of themselves, in the chat space. And then I think there's usually that mindset of the church will, one, acknowledge, constantly appreciate you, to some extent even, pay you either for your services, or if you demand something, they should be the first ones to come and respond.
Yeah.
So I want us to talk about that, just a place of talent, because I know you've been in those spaces, where you've either worked with people who are talented and have been brought on board, and then by the time they are leaving, they live with, all this pain and hurt because of unmet expectations, while they had given of themselves and probably even overgiven of themselves in that space.
Yeah, I mean, having been a DJ and doing events and different, I've been on missions actually with my church globally, and been with the band, had conversations. I mean, on the flight there, sometimes we'd go to a city, and I remember one in New Zealand. We went to a town, but it's mostly for retirees, and we had to sleep in these bunk beds for like a kindergarten. The town had 1,700 people. Even up to now, it doesn't have a lot of people by here. And I remember they were like, "But we are the talent guys. We're the guys singing. How come we're being set up?" Then I was like, "But there's nowhere else to stay at. Everyone, the guys who've come for this meeting or these guys you're singing to, are retirees. They have homes here. It's only one hotel, but then would you rather the 60-year-old sleep on the hotel or in the bunk bed?" But they're like, "But you see, they should have thought about it." We're like, "But it's a mission." And I remember that conversation was very heated, and it got me thinking about there's talent, which having worked in entertainment, both in a Christian entertainment space and in a secular entertainment space, creatives, we are very interesting humans. We have our heart on our sling, very close to I mean, things turn around and we feel more than we think.
Yes.
It's a good thing. It works in most instances, but then some other instances it works against us. But why I'm saying that is, church is exciting. To play at church is exciting, and I keep saying most of the gigs I did were in the church. That's where I perfected my craft. If you think about it, in the church you have 52 weeks of concerts. So if you're looking for concerts to play as a talented person, the church is the best place to practice. You have 52 weeks, so you have 52 events. So that's 52 services, 52 weeks, 52 services. Don't even think about Friday or weekday, midweek services. Those are bonuses, or camps and conferences. Those are bonus events. But if you are looking for events that you can play and become really good, church is the best place. That's why most singers are really good, because they sang in choir and practice 1,000 times. By the time they are being launched into the market, they're really good. So, and that's just to tell talented people that there's no problem. In fact, the church works in your favor as a talented, as a gifted person, because it offers free practice space and it's in front of people. I mean, singing on Sunday, you perform every Sunday. In fact, they have more gigs than commercial musicians. But having said that, and that I'm just saying to encourage someone, probably been serving in your church, you don't feel like it's adding value to your life. Let me tell you, those 52 concerts every year that you get to perform in front of people, think of it as value, where you get to practice your craft and learn and improve and practice. So it's actually a big value add just for any talented person out there listening or watching. Just know, serving in the church, it's a place for you to rehearse and become really good at your skill. But secondly, there's an element of and I see this a lot. If you look at most performers or artists or creatives, one thing they do is they either get management or they get someone who has legal, contractual skills. unfortunately, we because we feel this thing is right, or we feel that this place is good, has good vibes on vibes type of thing, we go in and pour ourselves. I mean, for us, it's about the art. It's about creating music or creating art or just, performing in your element. And that really gives us life. And sometimes we get to go in fast and offer our talent before we've had some of the hard discussions and conversations. And why I say this, and I say this because I've sat in both sides. I've been the musician being given a contract, but I've also been the one negotiating contracts with top musicians in this country. I worked at More Sound Events, and I was a project manager at some point for Groove, but I also did other secular events. And I'd call someone, I'm like, come to the office, let's have a chat. And because I know how a creative thinks, I'd go into the conversation. The first thing I ask them, do you have a contract? Or, of course, we had ours, but then this was just for me to ask them, do you have a contract? They're like, I mean, I know you're my boy. I'm like, yeah. But in this instance, you're not dealing with your boy. You're dealing with an employee who has things to follow. Like I have contracts, I have obligations, I have KPIs. And this is work I'm judged against how best I perform this contract negotiation. And they'll be like, no, but I trust you. I'm like, yes, you trust me. But it's important for you to have a contract. And you know what a contract is? A contract is a conversation which is put on pen and paper, legally binding, that allows you to go into an agreement or a performance space with clarity of what's expected of you, but also what's expected of the other person. For commercial events, we do that very well. But I feel like even in church spaces, and you might say maybe you're being too hard on the church by asking for a contract. Sometimes it's not asking them for a contract. You come with, and a contract is just terms that says, these are my expectations. I'll do 2 services or 3. I don't expect pay. I expect pay of this amount. And sometimes it can even be informal. Probably this is your church. You come and say, hey, before I go on stage, I'd like to just clarify, is this a paid event? And by paid, especially if that's how you earn your living, you say, if this time I'm giving to the church, should I expect any income? And what income? Not just any, because I might say, I will pay you, and then they give you 2K, and then you get really hurt. How come they pay me 2K and a pastor came and preached and was given 50,000? Why is preaching more important than me singing? So a conversation, which is a hard conversation. Feelers don't like this type of conversations. Why I said I like my engineering taught me how to clarify things and find the problem and find a solution. Engineering is finding solutions to problems. So my left hand works very well when it comes to systematic thinking. My creative side goes with the flow. I mean, we're here, we're having a good time. I really want to go jump on stage. I have a lot of stuff that I'd want to perform. I have this piece, I have this content. I want to do these things for the church. I mean, I'm excited. I'm feeling this jam or this. I'm a band player, I'm a musician. I'm feeling the space. I want to do it. And that side usually doesn't like those hard conversations. And the hard conversations usually it's, I like Gen Z. Let me just say Gen Zs are very straightforward. They're like, what is happening here? This or that. No T's and C's, no terms and conditions. But some of our millennials and some bit of Gen Zs, and maybe it's our African culture, we don't question. And how you come even at it with church leadership is to say, hey, I'm giving of my time. I just want some clarity on, should I expect any income? And it's okay to even push it further to that difficult place of asking, how much am I being paid, or how much do I expect to be paid, and how much do you expect of me to give myself? What that does to you is it frees you from a lot of things. It frees you from the expectation from both sides. It also makes it the relationship very cordial, because I already know what to expect. This guy is not paying me, so I'm singing as a service to God, or I'm being paid and I'm being paid exactly this amount. So even when it comes, there won't be any hang downs or anger or bitterness or resentment, because you had the conversation way before. And mind to tell anyone who is a creative working with the church, it's okay to, in fact, remember when you were kids, we were being told, no, there's no stupid questions. Stupid questions, I've come to learn, are the ones that bring a lot of clarity. And stupid questions are, you've come to play, but then you're like, are we being paid? People will laugh, ha 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 ha, yeah, but how do you expect to be paid? But when you come into that space with that question, what it does, it clears all the tension in the room. The awkwardness ends because you're like, okay, at least we know we are being paid or we're not being paid. And then you push on further, how much are we being paid? But then asking that question doesn't make you become money-oriented, because that's also what creatives fear. If I ask that question, it's going to be a bit, they'll think I'm all about money. I don't want to serve God. No. It actually frees everybody in the room. And even you perform better because this one, I'm giving it my all. I'm just doing it for content. In other spaces, when they say they don't have money, but if they find they'll give you, at least you're going in with clarity. So have those hard conversations. Contracts are good things to have, and not just with the church, with anyone, any place, even in family. They have this big event, then you realize later they had a budget, but because you never asked, you were not paid. But then you get so angry, these guys, they should know better. But sometimes you're trying to save the coin to do other things, and because you never asked, no one gave you, which now leads to anger, resentment, in fact, gossip. You start saying those guys have a lot of money, but they never paid. But sometimes I keep asking my people, but did you ask?
Yeah, did you communicate?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think that's really, very insightful what you've shared about, just as a creative, just that place of having difficult conversations. And if you haven't checked that episode, we did an episode about how to have difficult conversations. So if you know that you're a feeler, you're a creative, and you just don't know how to navigate that space, you can go check out that episode to just get equipped with that. But also I was going to add, definitely if you're going to, ask for pay and whatnot, you also have to be someone who's bringing value. Don't be an amateur. You have to know what value are you bringing, or if you need time to just grow your gift or grow your talent. And then humility, my guy, just be humble, do it as service unto God. And I feel like that question, that response answers the next question that I was going to ask about that place of how do you guard your heart from your heart, because there's heart and heart.
Yes.
Yeah, but then how do you guard your heart from, just that place of not getting, you will get hurt in a way, within the church environment. But then it's, for me, I always say it's your own responsibility to guard your own heart, to ensure that you end up not building walls, because that's what people do. You build up walls, cancel culture comes in, you cancel these people, you develop this bitterness within you, whereby church, anytime you hear anything to do with church, there's a lot of bitterness and rage and anger that actually wells up, and part of it's because, we don't know how to guard our heart when we are in these spaces, in the church spaces. And once again, also it goes back to the whole place of your expectations not being met. So I know that's one of the things that we can do, whereby you communicate your expectations, or rather just asking questions. But are there other ways that we can ensure that we safeguard our hearts from, getting hurt or getting, church hurt?
Yeah, and actually, you brought an interesting point about knowing your value. But I'd add another line to that. Be honest with that value that you think you have. And see, the moment you're honest with, for instance, you have probably you're sneezing or coughing. One of the things that you can do about it is admit that probably I maybe need to see a doctor, or I'm just gonna boil ginger and lemon in the house, and it's gonna go away. But it needs an honest conversation with yourself, which helps you diagnose or figure out exactly, truthfully, and it's honest conversations with self. We all are creatives. We all want to be the best. In fact, we all call ourselves the best. I'm the best, musician in the East and Central. What do they say? How do you say it? Best musician, East and Central Africa, or south of the Sahara, or Limpopo. Just we say the number one, hype man, the number one guitarist. We label ourselves those things, and it's good, positive vibes only. Yeah. But then, for really good, creative, skillful players, they're very open to criticism, both externally, but also inwardly. So, for instance, I think I'm a feedback junkie, which, I mean, what that means is I want to hear, especially people who I interact with, what they think about either something I said or how I said it. Because in there is where I'll find the truth that will help me become better. For most creatives, especially when you're young, and in church spaces, maybe the church hasn't had like brilliant musicians, because I mean that whole line, listen to my words, not my voice. So if you're slightly above average, sometimes you come in with the attitude, which God also needs to work on your heart, that you're really the best that there is in this space. You may be really good, and maybe the church can't afford you. That's one side. You might also be work in progress. And most of us are work in progress. In fact, my new mantra nowadays is I want to be an expert learner. I don't want to be an expert. I just want to know how to learn.
I like that.
If I become an expert learner, everywhere I go, there's a chance and a space for learning.
Yeah, and growing.
So as musicians, sometimes you come into the space, and now I've moved from the creative to the side of the church, but also I'll flip-flop between those two sides. You come and say, hey, I'm the best guitarist. Guitarists get paid 10K per gig, secular spaces or commercial events. So the church is offering 5K. I can't take that money. But the reality is your rent is due next month. There might not be a commercial gig coming up. You just need to sit yourself down and say, hey, you know what? I know this is what I'm worth, but for now, this is what is available, and I really need to pay rent. But most people, because I'm a big deal, I won't take whatever is offered. I'll turn it down, but then when I have rent, I'll blame it on the church. Which is, and this is just an example of not telling yourself the truth. This is my reality. This is what I'm valued at. But whatever the market price is offering at the moment cannot meet doesn't mean that my gift is less honorable or less valuable. But in this instance, willing buyer, willing seller, this is what is available in the market. And that's the wisdom that comes in and says, you know what, I'll take it, but that doesn't devalue me. In fact, I'll let them know I'm flexible enough to work with this, but next time I don't want it to go to 7. So even the person on the other side will feel like this person knows their value, but also they're appreciative of where the market is. And by market, I'm using commercial terms. This is what we are able to pay as a church in this instance. Maybe they can pay more, but again, you have to also think about the church. It has many other programs. And I know they start with prioritizing rent and you know all these other big pieces, sometimes more than the creative piece which happens every Sunday, which is a problem that some of the church leadership needs to actually work on. That's why I said I'll flip-flop between the two. The church also needs to value musicians and value their work and their craft and try get to market rate. But then for musicians also, you need to work on your craft to be to a point where you are so good that they can't do the services without your services. But again, the church is very flexible. It can work with the best, and sometimes it can work with work in progress.
Yeah.
In fact, I keep saying it's work in progress because you're learning. But also, go practice your art. Go make your craft. And the church might not just be the only place you make your living. Or
it can just be a grounds, and somebody else will notice your gift and your talent, and through that you can now make money out of it. It's just a platform. It could just be a platform for you to grow your skill, and also the popular we pay you through exposure.
Yeah. And that's not actually this is what I say. It's not a bad thing. The attitude that and the tone that it's said and the circumstances is what makes it a bad thing.
Yeah.
Case in point, this is what I'll say. When I was in college, I paid through my college. So I paid my college fees. I mean, I was in that job system, so fees wasn't as crazy as it is right now. Oh my God, right now it's I was doing the math. I was like, whoo.
Yeah.
God saved us. But the fact that I was playing at church, so youth church at Nairobi Chapel was called Club Expressions. Why I put the word club? Because there was a DJ every Sunday. I was that DJ. And if I wasn't there, I'd get someone else to come play. So we were like, you know what, these expressions, XP, if you've been to Nairobi Chapel, the word club came because there was a DJ full-time. But you know what that did to me? Playing every Sunday. I got a lot of weddings to play, which were paid. And some of these clients, I remember one, I'd say, we want you to come for rehearsal. I don't have money. They're like, we pay you 15,000 to just appear with a music player on my hand, play one song, go home, get 15,000. Ideally, this person trusted me because he saw me playing on church. I mean, on the church platform. But that exposure, what it did, it increased my market base.
Yeah.
And this is what I say sometimes. Sometimes when you get to play at church, maybe it's a space where you're exposed to more clients, but then it's up to you to actually activate those clients.
Yeah.
Because what used to happen is after church, I'd have a chat. People would come naturally. People come for my craft. DJ is an easier guy to approach. Other people, maybe as an MC or a worship leader, or you offer different services. Probably it might not be that easy. But what I realized was there's actually exposure for me. I was paid in exposure, and why I say exposure is a lot of the traveling became easy because they were like, oh, we see this guy playing. He could join our missions. We're going to Germany. Who was the first guy on the list? The DJ who plays. And I play for free. I wasn't... In fact, I don't even ask. So that hard conversations, I don't have it with my church. Especially because for me, it's service to the church. But then what that did to me is actually exposed me to more people who I meet even today. They're like, oh, I saw you in Nairobi Chapel. I have this event coming up. And this is our budget. And I'm like... I didn't market, I didn't look for this business, but because they saw me, I was exposed to the people, then there's business that comes along, but I have to activate it. So most of us are like, we stand on stage, do our thing, but then tomorrow, we don't even interact, or after the service, or the next day, you don't even interact with these people to see whether there might be more business other than just what the church is paying you for playing or singing, because the congregation is a whole different market. That's why banks love churches, because they're like, these are humans who believe whatever everyone on stage says. So if you're on stage, the exposure is not just them seeing you and becoming a celebrity, but there's the follow-up where you actually go and activate this exposure by, cards, business cards, offering your services. Yeah. And I don't think even the church would refuse if you actually wanted to have them mention as they introduce you that this guy also does parties, events, or drama, or you're a full master of ceremony. If you have your staff end of year party, please consider one of our guys here who is our church MC, or this play you're about to watch. These guys have their plays every Thursday at KNT. I mean, those are some of the value things that you can barter trade. If you're being paid the lowest amount in the market, you can barter trade for more, which helps deal with a bit of these expectations. But then something interesting, maybe before we talk about that exposure thing, is Church Hurt has a very interesting thing that people don't get hurt by the church. They get hurt by someone in the church. And I keep telling people, you don't have church wounds, you have people wounds. Because ideally, it's someone who was leading a department or someone who was in the church. Because if you go back to that wound, it's not the whole body that really crossed you. Probably
it's an individual or a group.
Head of services or head of MCs or the teacher, or you are on staff and they had a boss. Because people leave bosses. People don't leave organizations or companies. People leave bosses. And there's something you actually said when you were beginning, that a church is a hospital. And church being a hospital, it means that the healthy ones are not there. We always say church is a hospital. People are sick. If you are healthy, you won't be in a hospital. But even beyond that is that everyone is trying to be like Jesus. And people fail a lot in that journey of becoming like Jesus. And the places where they fail mostly is how to deal with people. And if that's a mindset, then I like what I think Jesus gave this example in Matthew 5:24, that when you're about to offer your sacrifice and you have an issue with your brother, first go and sort it out. Why I like that, especially when it comes to church wounds, is it's people who offend us. It's people who cause us. The friction happens. Whenever you bring people together, there's going to be friction because you're very different. We think differently. We reason differently. Our style of communication, our attachment styles are very different. So there's bound going to be a lot of, friction. But that passage of leave your sacrifices and all those things you're giving to God and go reconcile or go look for reconciliation was a game changer. And if you read up there, Jesus talks about murder and many other things. Hard things make people do crazy things. But your sacrifice is not even valuable if you still have beef or issues or wounds that you haven't dealt with people. And I know I'm going into very complex issues because I'm like, you don't know my situation. This guy was very mean, was narcissistic, had all these things. But if you come in with the lens that these guys are in a hospital, they're trying to be made to be like Jesus.
Yeah.
So their anger issues are still unsorted. Jesus is sorting them day at a time. They are not perfect leaders. In fact, their leadership is put to the test daily. Actually, sometimes more than in other spaces. Because in your work, it's written down, you do this, no one cares about you. In the church, it's a bit of feelings, it's a bit of how Jesus do it. So these guys are actually under more stress and bound to fail more than in the corporate space. That's why people say it's easy in the corporate, hard in the church. Church is because it's a community. We keep seeing each other every day, and then it's voluntary. No one is forced to be here. So people come in, they volunteer, but they have a whole lot of baggage coming in with them. And the moment we pause to say and feel that these are people who are also trying to figure it out as much as I'm figuring out, you then move into the space with a bit of grace, with a bit of
understanding,
compassion, and compassion and empathy, saying, okay, maybe this person had a hard day at home with their husband or their wife, or their kids really took him, or their mother is sick in the hospital. And this is the only one point that someone has triggered them and they've lashed out at me. Then you make the conclusion, this person hates me. But probably this person, as much as he's seeking salvation for his soul, all of us are doing the same. And I know it's easier to pinpoint, especially the church leadership, by saying they should have known better. But they're also trying to figure it out as much as you're trying to figure it out. Same with art. They're trying to figure out life. And that, I'm saying that sort of absolves the issue or is justice. But I'm just saying that's a starting point. That if you have that perspective that these guys are unhealthy, they're trying to look for health, they want to be better leaders, they are work in progress, then you come in with a bit of a different mindset. Let me just maybe conclude with this story. If you come from a hospital and probably your mom or dad or brother or sister, you go in and you get news that they're really like have a life-threatening illness, probably cancer or diabetes, or they only have 5 days to live. When you come from that space and then you meet people out there playing with life, what's your mindset? You normally go in thinking, hey, these guys don't know the value of life. Your mindset changes. You've come from hospital, your mom or dad has been told they have 20 days to live. So when you go out there into the field or into the bus or into whatever space you go, and then you find people playing with life, they're not taking their health seriously, you really get worked up. But then you come in with a bit of change in heart where you're like, these guys don't really know the value of life. But you see, yours is based off, you've already had an encounter with someone who has 20 days to live. So your antennae or your appreciation of life is so much higher because of what you've just come out from the hospital. So you come in with more compassion, more empathy. So the fact that you've already know someone who is about to, maybe lose their lives in the next 20 days, it makes you go into these other spaces with a very sober, empathetic, compassion, gracious mindset. So in that same light, if you go into a church, think about it. These are people who Jesus is trying to save, or they've just gotten saved, or they've been saved, but they are struggling with all these issues that God is working on them. And you might also be one of them. I mean, you're also on the same journey. That should give you a different mindset. The same way, if you know someone who's dying very soon, you appreciate life. If you know you're also struggling, then if you go into that space, go with the mindset that this person, as much as I'm really judging them and expecting a lot from them, what if maybe they're going through even worse situations than mine? And that mindset kind of helps you to pause and say, what is happening with this person? This person in the church who is really mean to me, I think that they're narcissistic or they're self-centered. What is, if you took time to just pause, what are they hurting from? What is Jesus trying to save them from? Because then that allows you to have a very different perspective of how you engage, helps you not carry a lot of baggage and hurt. And I've found that to be very effective, especially in very heated spaces, especially in the church. I pause and say, that person who just hit me or took my seat in the church, maybe they have a sick person in the hospital. Maybe their mind is not even here. Maybe. It might be wrong. But once I start thinking like that, you know what happens? I give them grace and empathy. I'm like, you know what? I won't judge them harshly. That leader, maybe he hasn't even eaten. Maybe he doesn't even have rent. You are seeing him saying he'll pay you 10K. Maybe he doesn't even know where his money is coming from or school fees. So that pausing and that perspective change has helped me a lot in a lot of church setups every day, and because it happens every Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that. And what a beautiful, beautiful way to learn this. And I think some of the key things that I've picked, I love, how you really broke down the whole place of church exposure, as much as sometimes we think church exposure is negative and we need to be paid money. But I think what I've picked, from today's conversation is just that place of, first of all, being your own self-advocate, marketing yourself if you can. Right now in the era of social media, you can tell us more about what you do beyond just, the platform that you've been given in the chat space, and appreciating the fact that, it could just be a platform that God has provided for you to display and showcase your gifts and your talents. But then when it comes to even God building you financially beyond, just either what you're earning or what you're being paid, God can use other means of doing that. So I love the fact that, you've talked about that, and also just know your value, have some of those hard conversations with yourself and also with some of the leaders in the spaces that you get to serve in. And what a beautiful way to learn this. And I know this topic is quite extensive. I think today we've just tackled on, just church heart, particularly, just among the creatives. And I know there's a lot to be discussed about this. Probably we'll do another episode to just, unpack the place of church hurt. I know there's some who've been betrayed, in one way or another, whether you are in a community, a small group. So I know there's another side of it, but I'm glad that today we really got to tackle more about creatives. And I do hope that you got one thing or two. DJ Celeb, I don't know that you have final thoughts as we wind this down.
So my final thoughts are this. Someone said something about forgiveness and heart. And he said, actually two things. I'm just combining different people who say different things. We suffer more in our imagination than in reality. You said, guard your heart, from it comes the issues of life. Whatever you hold in your heart or in your mind, you cannot keep telling stories in your head, which sometimes might not be true or true about the church or the person who's hurt you, or someone who you hold in contempt. And so a lot of it happens in the mind. You suffer more in imagination more than in reality. But the second thing I wanted to say is forgiveness you've always thought, I'm forgiving that other person, so they're going to feel nice. But in actual sense, forgiveness is about self. Forgiveness is that thing where you set yourself free. You're the prisoner. And if you hold on to church heart, and I know that it's complex, it's a complex issue. There are many faces to it. But at the core of it there's an issue of unforgiveness. And what forgiveness does for you, it helps you guard your heart. And how you guard your heart sometimes is what you remove from your heart and what you put in, but mostly what you remove. Because you see, heart is something you hold on to. And by the time you forgive someone or you start learning to forgive, basically what you learn to do is setting yourself free. And if there's anything I tell people, they might have done all those many things to you. They might never apologize. But forgiveness at its core, from all this hurt, is not even about them. It's about you. It's about you being free, you having a lighter heart, you even being able to perform as a creative optimally because you're not holding things in your heart. So forgiveness at the core of it is setting yourself free. So if you're going through someone hurt you, as much as you seek justice, because justice is a whole different story altogether, especially if something was illegal or there was a moral issue that needed being addressed. That's another whole phase to it. But at the core of it is you being in a place where you're free from the heart. And the only way you do it is forgiveness. So forgiveness sets you free, makes you whole. And cancel culture is now the next conversation after this, because you see with heart and all those unforgiveness things, you start cancelling everything. Those guys never X. But before you even get there, how about you do yourself a favor, you reward yourself by letting go. Forgiveness is your reward. and it helps you guard your heart. Because above everything else, guard your heart. From your heart comes the issues of life. I don't know if you ever figured what those issues are. Your joy, those positive vibes, those good vibes you keep talking about, those good vibes come from your heart. That good feeling, that energy, that motivation comes from your heart. And if you're keeping heart inside, heart with the HURT in your heart, then those good vibes that you keep praying and manifesting on Instagram and TikTok, they may actually not be really good vibes because they are mixed up with all this heart and forgiveness you've carried in your heart. So if you want good vibes, let go, forgive. Then you truly experience what good vibes is all about.
Wow.
Peace.
Love it. Love it. What a way to learn this. And thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I really do hope that you've gotten a thing or two. Let us know in the chat comment section, what are some of the things that you have gleaned on from today's episode, some of the lessons, or even your own personal experience, just on this topic. I'd love to hear more on that. Otherwise, do subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, and do share this episode with your friends, with your circle. You just never know who's gonna be helped or just be encouraged by this particular episode. But until next time, it is a goodbye from me. See you.